Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Jeff Pender, joined here today with my colleague, Michael Goldberg. Michael, hello.
Hey, Jeff.
And we have a special guest today, Sonya Williams Barnes. Sonya Williams Barnes, former Mississippi legislator that I've known for quite a while from my coast days as well. And currently state policy director for the SPLC, correct, for Mississippi.
That's right, Jeff.
And former state representative of District 119 in Gulfport in the Mississippi State House. And I believe you were there from 2012 to 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. During that time, as I recall, you served as chairwoman of the Legislative Black Caucus, was a very instrumental leader in a big issue at the time, changing the state flag. You've been a very strong advocate for voting rights, and we're going to get to that momentarily too. As I told you before, this intro could go on for a long time. One thing I was going to mention is recently you had a pretty meteoric campaign for mayor of Gulfport that it set some records for turnout. Ultimately unsuccessful, but a very very impressive run in a very red city. Turnout there set all-time records, correct?
That's right. Absolutely.
The 13,000 turnout in a race that usually had a couple of thousand, is that?
As little as 870 some people actually voted for the mayor in the prior election.
Okay.
And so, 13,000 people, over 13,000 people showed up, which was fun. It's to see the engagement of the city.
Sure.
Yeah.
And business owner as well, down on the coast, mortuary business.
Yes, family business.
Okay.
Yes.
As I said, we go way back between the legislature and on the coast, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sure. One major topic we want to talk about, as I mentioned, is voting rights and some efforts that are going on the national level and on the state level. Two particular pieces of legislation, I believe, you would like to talk about today. Give us a thumbnail sketch of what's going on and what these two initiatives are.
Well, actually, those two pieces of legislation are now just one piece of legislation. It's the SHIELD Act. And the SHIELD Act is Senate Bill 2588. And it is going to cause barriers for people to vote, for actual citizens to vote. And so it is of great concern of mine and should be of many Mississippians.
Sure. And I misspoke. I was actually referring to the SAVE Act on the federal level, which I guess is somewhat part and parcel with this effort.
And speaking of SAVE, I believe that's the name of a database, a federal database that would be used, that the SHIELD Act proposes the state use. So walk us through how that would work, what is being proposed with that database, with the SHIELD Act, and walk us through some of the barriers that you see.
Yes. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate that. And because it's so important that our citizens know what these barriers are. And what we foresee, if this becomes law, if this Senate Bill 2588 becomes law, that it is going to harm our elderly. It is going to cause barriers for women whose names may be different than what their birth certificates say because they've changed their name after marriage. It could also cause barriers for our veterans and for disabled persons here in our state, and also for rural Mississippians. And so with that in mind, and because in Mississippi, we have no data showing that we have a problem with non-citizens voting. Why do we have this? What is the real reason? And we don't need to cause and create barriers for people to vote. We need to be lowering barriers and making sure that all registered voters are able to vote.
You mentioned, I guess you might say, a solution in search of a problem. But one thing I made note of here recently, Utah has about the same number of registered voters we do, somewhere around 2 million. They did a pretty exhaustive study on the issue of non-citizens being registered. Out of 2 million voters, they looked into the issue. They found one voter, non-citizen registered. The federal government has looked into the issue, and there's federal legislation pertaining to this too. I believe they found in their study 0.04% that might be an issue. So, as you said, what are we doing here?
Sure.
And back to the SHIELD Act on the state level, Michael, this is going to require, in a lot of cases, a driver's license, which some people don't have.
Or can't get. If you're disabled, if you're blind,
Sure.
if you don't drive, you can't get a
Last time I checked, having a driver's license is not, mandatory for voting. It should not be. It's also, you mentioned it's going to require clerks to look through what might not be the best database.
Right. It will require clerks to do that. And, an argument that was made during a quite lengthy debate on the House floor was that there will be ample time for, local voting precincts to inform members who are at risk of being taken off the rolls. Tell us why, engagement, making sure that voters are aware of what they must come sort of prepared with, et cetera. Walk us through why it might be a problem. What is the counter argument to the idea that, there will be ample opportunity for potential voters to fix whatever paperwork issues that they might be having? Were your constituents even aware at all times of what they needed to have to make sure they were eligible to vote?
And so when you think of some examples, you have an African-American man in the Delta that was born during Jim Crow. Many of them don't even have birth certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Are able to get birth certificates. Yet he's been registered. He's been voting for years. You have someone that may not be able to have transportation to get to 8 hours or 6 hours to Jackson to get a birth certificate, mm-hmm. or to go through the process of getting that, but yet they're already registered voters. We have been told by our leaders that Mississippi does not have a voter fraud issue, that we have one of the safest states to vote in. So why this now? That has actually been said.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, along those same lines, for decades, as long as I can remember, and I know even before, in Mississippi, the power structure has frequently shouted states' rights when it comes to any kind of elections, and with the Voting Rights Act and things like that, it was always the feds need to keep their hands off, and we don't need databases or anything like that. Well, now, this is different. That sea change, I would think your efforts to halt this, I would think you would have some natural allies within
and
the Republican Party or libertarians.
Right. Because this is going to go across party lines.
Sure.
It's going to affect every Mississippian, regardless of color, regardless of party. And when you think about it, and just thinking about some numbers and the impact of this, 2.2 million Mississippians don't have a valid passport. 647,000 voters in Mississippi have changed their last names. Those are real numbers and will create real issues.
Sure. The birth certificate thing in rural Mississippi, that's a real issue for anyone who's over, I don't know what age, but I mean, just, the rural nature of the state, and people just were not issued
a
certificate. So, again, that could place some major impediments on voting for an issue that does not look like it is a real problem.
It's not.
And, Jeff, you mentioned sort of a solution in search of a problem. I'm curious, when you served, how, is this clear to you that it is a direct sort of, trying to placate someone in Washington? I mean, when you were in the legislature, did you see these sort of this trickle-down effect where a priority in Washington is, might not necessarily be indicative of a problem here at the state level? I mean, how novel is this, to you? And just as an observer of this bill, is that clear to you what's going on here?
So, yes, there's some big comparisons, and it has been for several years that national politics is beginning to play a part in here in our state, and even on the local level as well. So that's not uncommon, but it's not acceptable. And our residents need to know the challenges that they could possibly face by having this piece of legislation, as well as others, passed here in our state house.
You mentioned, I think you had some Mississippi numbers. I looked at some nationwide again. I guess most folks, if they're voters or plan to vote, think about this. Do you have some documentation showing you're a U.S. citizen? Apparently, nationwide, 9% of people don't. I'm thinking about it. I've got a driver's license, but I don't know that I carry around any proof of my citizenship. A huge percentage nationwide, and I assume here too, from what you mentioned, do not have a passport. Again, we mentioned the birth certificate issue here. Yeah, these appear to be, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, taking a big step back to some issues we had in Mississippi with voting.
Yes. And, we passed legislation years ago, several years ago, when Lieutenant Governor Hoseman, this was a big thing for him. And we have a whole list of items.
Voter ID.
Yeah, voter ID in order to be registered. So if you are registered and you're showing up in the polls, why should you have to have these other?
Right.
Yeah.
And talk us through the cost issue as well. I recall on the House debate, one representative likened this bill to a poll tax. So what is the cost involved in getting all of this documentation? Is that a barrier that you see?
Oh, most definitely. It is a barrier. Driver's license have their fees. Birth certificates have their fees. Passports even have larger fees. And passports take so long to get. A birth certificate, unless you can drive to Jackson, you can't get a birth certificate right then and there. You can't get, if I'm in Gulfport, I can't get just walk up to a building and get a birth certificate.
Have to come to Jackson.
I have to come to Jackson to get it on that day, or I have to mail. And you know how that could work as far as time in between. In cost, what $25 may not be a big deal to one of you or myself, but that is a big deal to some people here in our state.
Sure.
It could mean, do I vote or do I buy my family food for the day?
Missing a day of work.
Or missing a day of work. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a challenge. And whatever legislator compared it to a poll tax, I agree with them. I mean, it is a tax to vote. It is something that they would have to pay to vote. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, all this would include clerks having to log into a federal database. And from what I understand or have read a good bit about it, it may not be all that reliable of a database. We could have lots of mistakes, lots of people who should be eligible to vote that get kicked out or delayed. Do you get the sense that this is coming about because of the midterms and maybe some angst among the GOP in Washington about how these might play out? Or
well, definitely the timing,
right.
says its own. I just think that we should really be concerned about this, and if anyone is able to hear this before this bill passes, that they should reach out to their legislators and ask them. It has passed the House. It's the Senate Bill 2588. It's passed the House, and it will go to the Senate to concur or to not concur. And they need to ask for the Senate to vote against, their senators to vote against this piece of legislation, because it could be the very thing that prevents you from being able to vote on any election that's coming up and going forward.
And Sonya, we really appreciate you joining us. And if it's all right, we may try and secure a promise to come back and revisit this when we see what shakes out. As we speak right now, we're entering the final stages of the legislative session, so we shall see here shortly what happens with this act. And I'd like to follow up with you on that, most definitely.
Most definitely. I'm here for it.
Okay. As always, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. We ask you to like and subscribe. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.